Hey everyone, welcome to the Play Easy Warm-Up, where we dive into the world of sports, innovation, and the amazing impact of the world of sports tourism. I'm your host, Kerri Shields, co-founder and president of Play Easy. And today we're exploring a topic that's gaining major momentum, sports tourism. Whether you're already familiar with the term or just hearing it for the first time, this episode will break it all down and highlight why it's becoming such a powerful force in the world of travel and events. I'm thrilled to finally kick off this podcast, and I want to start by thanking everyone for the support and encouragement that helped make this into a reality. To give you a sense of what to expect, this season will run through the end of the year, with new episodes dropping every Tuesday morning. Each episode will have two parts. First, a roundup of top stories in the sporting event and tourism industry. Everything from major announcements to bids won to community-driven impact stories. Then, we'll dive into a featured interview with a professional from the industry. Before our first episode, I thought I would give a little more context on the introduction to sports tourism. So what is sports tourism? And why should we care about it? Well, at its core, sports tourism refers to travel that involves either attending or participating in a sporting event. It can range from fans traveling to the Olympics, like we saw this summer, all the way to amateur athletes participating in local tournaments. But it's much more than just booking a flight and finding a seat at a game. Sports tourism is creating opportunities for destinations, businesses, and communities to thrive in ways that they may have never imagined. So why should this matter to cities? Well, sports tourism presents an enormous opportunity to drive year-round traffic, particularly in cities that might not attract traditional tourists. It also creates a ripple effect. New infrastructure, job creation, and increased media exposure can lead to long-term economic benefits. But beyond the financials, what's really powerful about sports tourism and what I am super passionate about is the impact it has on people in the communities. Sports have a unique way of bringing people together, bridging cultural divides, fostering relationships, and creating lasting memories. Whether you're an athlete, a coach, or just a fan, traveling for sports creates experiences that go far beyond the field or court, etc. We're witnessing destinations across the U.S. fully embrace sports tourism. Cities are investing in world-class sports complexes, bidding to host regional, national, and international events, and capitalizing on their rich sports history to attract visitors. I've had the opportunity to travel all across the country since we started Play Easy a few years ago, and there are cities that I probably would have never had the opportunity to go to if it wasn't for sports. And it's those stories that I really hope to share on this podcast. But there's one city, however, that has really led the charge in sports tourism for decades, the city of Indianapolis. It's home to the first ever sports commission, Indiana Sports Corp, which has been shaping the landscape of sports tourism from the start. Now, let's take a trip down memory lane. Back in 2019, our Play Easy founding team spent the summer in Indianapolis as part of the first ever Techstars Sports Accelerator. When I told friends and family that I was moving from Boston for the summer, the most common question was, why Indy? Honestly, I didn't fully understand it myself until I got there. What we found was a city and an organization that had built their entire downtown and identity around sports. That summer was a transformative experience for our business and played a huge role in where we are today. We had always been participants in the sports tourism industry, but it wasn't until we were immersed in Indianapolis's unique approach that we truly understood what it meant to build a destination around sports. That's why, when thinking about our first podcast guest, I knew I had to invite my dear friend and mentor, Melissa Thompson, who is currently the Vice President of Bids and External Affairs at Indiana Sports Corp. I wanted her to share her invaluable insights with all of you, and her passion for her community and Indianapolis as a whole really shows through this interview, and I hope you guys enjoyed as much as I did. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first ever Play Easy Warm-Up podcast. I am so excited to have my first ever guest, Melissa Thompson, who is the Vice President of Bids and External Affairs at Indiana Sports Corp, providing strategic guidance and leadership to support the organization and fulfilling its mission of impacting the community through sports. This year, she also became a multi-award winner. She made me say this, just kidding, when she won the 2024 Empower Award at the Indiana Women's Summit and was part of the team that brought home the best sports event, host city, and best amateur sports event within 2024 U.S. Olympic swim trials at the 2024 Sports Travel Awards. When she's not taking over the world, she is a dear friend and mentor of mine, and I couldn't be more honored to have her here today. So welcome, Melissa. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very honored to be here.
Well, so to give a bit of context for everyone listening, Melissa has been a huge part in what we've built at Play Easy. I don't think there would be a company or who we are as a team today without her guidance, her friendship, and just who she has been as a mentor for our company. We were part of the first ever Techstars program that took place in Indianapolis in the summer of 2019. So we spent 3 months really learning from sports tourism in the city of Indianapolis. And so, as I said, she's a dear friend. And when I thought of who I wanted first to be a part of this podcast, it was Melissa. So thank you again.
You'll make me choke up. Jeez.
Already getting emotional.
Already getting emotional. Pull it back together.
Yeah. So, Melissa, I know I gave a bit of an introduction, but for those who are watching and listening who do not know who you are, do you mind sharing a little bit more about your background and how you got involved with Indiana Sports Corp?
Sure. Again, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been my pleasure to just become friends with you all and hopefully help in a little way just create a company that will be incredibly successful for years to come. But yeah, so my background, I'm from Indianapolis. I grew up on the far east side of Indianapolis and grew up really understanding just how important sports was to our city and what we do. We started my career in local government, actually, not in tourism or sports, but really helping make our city greater by serving the community in local government. I learned a whole lot of things about budgets and criminal justice and all of the things that go into making a city great. And so that experience, I was there for almost 13 years, and that experience really gave me the tools that I needed to walk into being in sports tourism. So I worked for the city for quite a while and then switched over to our downtown association. About the same time that I left the city, we were getting ready to host the 2012 Super Bowl, and we had taken a 3-block city street and turned it into an event venue. That's a downtown walkway that has built-in infrastructure to be able to host a great tailgate party, whatever. And so our downtown association was going to manage that, and I left the city and went to the downtown association and was the first venue manager for what we call Georgia Street. Did that for a couple of years, really enjoyed it. Got to be the one to sort of like kick it off, get it off the ground and create all those processes and SOPs, if you want to call it, for how you hold a great event there and then really get to build the event structure that was there. I left there after a couple of years and went to a small consulting firm and did event planning and some grassroots politics, sort of went back into politics a little bit, but then really realized how much I missed community development and that sort of tourism event side. And the person that was the president of Indiana Sports Corp was a friend of mine that I'd worked with before. And so he asked me to come over here and really lead their effort to bid on events, but also to put Indiana on a national stage and for us to re-engage with communities across the country and really raise our reputation in the sports tourism world. Not that we didn't already have a great one, but just to really continue to amplify what we were doing. So yeah, that's kind of my background. I like to say that the thread between all of it is actually community development. It's about being involved in your community. How are you helping make it better? So I feel like each stop along my career, I've been able to do that. And it's not just necessarily about tourism or throwing parties, but really developing your community.
And that's something we'll get into later in this conversation. But I think that's really how we became close, was just our passion of the impact of sports on not just an individual or an organization, but the overall community. And being able to spend that summer in Indianapolis really opened our eyes just to the amount that bringing in those events could have on the local economy and the community. So for the topic of this conversation is around really introducing sports tourism. Sports tourism is something that I participated in, since I was 7 years old, but I really didn't understand the depth of what really is sports tourism until we spent those 3 months in Indianapolis. So in your words, could you tell us what is sports tourism?
It's really it's the impact that sports across all sectors has on your local economy, right? So it's really tourism being people coming to your city to visit, and then really sports tourism being that, from a youth soccer tournament that's bringing in maybe 80% of their teams from a regional or out of state area, all the way up to a Super Bowl or a Big Ten football championship or the Final Four. So all of the things that are related to people traveling into your city and spending their dollars in your city related to sports is what we consider sports tourism.
Love it. You always say it better than I could ever say. That's as part of Indiana Sports Corp. Indiana Sports Corp was the first ever sports commission in the United States back in 1979. It originated, and since then, there's over 350 sports commissions across the country. Could you tell us a little bit more about what is a sports commission? What was the original mission, and kind of how has it evolved over the course of those 30 plus years?
Yeah, so honestly, when we were created right after the Congress created the Amateur Sports Act of 1978. And our real goal was to bring sports businesses to Indianapolis. And so the Sports Commission was actually created not necessarily to bring big events here, but to bring those NGBs. AAU used to be located here. The NCAA is here now. USA Gymnastics, USA Track and Field, USA Football, USA Diving are all headquartered in Indianapolis, along with the American College of Sports Medicine, the National Federation of High School Sport, so that was our original mission, was to bring those businesses to create economic impact and economic development in our downtown. We continued to evolve and realized as we built our downtown that we had something going here and that we could do really great sporting events. And so if you've ever been to Indianapolis, our downtown is built very centrally. You can walk everywhere. We tell people that you can drive it. If you drive in from the airport or you drive in from somewhere else, you can literally park your car at your hotel and not get in it again until you leave. Because everything is, both our hotels, our convention center, our baseball stadium, our football stadium, our basketball arena are all within walking distance, along with hundreds of restaurants and bars that really add to what we're able to do. And really, a sports commission, in my mind, is there to impact the community and there to create economic development and economic growth. I'm kind of jumping ahead to your next, what I think is your next question, but a CVB or a DMO is really there. They're also there to drive tourism and economic impact, but their sole goal is to put heads in beds, right? To make sure that their convention center is full, other venues are full, but also that the hotels and the restaurants are full. Yes, we do that as well, but we also want to impact the community in what we're doing. So we want to make sure that with every event that we do or that we're a part of, that there's a legacy initiative that's left for our community, or there's a way for us to engage our local citizens as volunteers. We want them to be a part of that event and to feel like, to get to experience that and to feel like they've had some vested interest in it. So the DMO, the CVB, that's not their goal. Like, they don't have a 10,000 person list of volunteers like we do. They don't make sure that somebody's fixing a basketball court as part of the Final Four when their events come to town, right? So the differences really are that impact that we're able to make on our community and not just on the financial piece of our community.
No, that was great. And just for anyone listening, when we talk about our destination partners, it's kind of the umbrella that covers a sports commission, a CVB, a DMO, but the goals are a bit different in terms of those separate entities. And I think that was something that really opened my eyes when we were in Indianapolis. I was able to talk to Ryan Vaughn, your former boss and head of Indiana Sports Corp, and he really spoke of just it's not just about the big event that's taking place. So it's not just about the Super Bowl, but it's everything around that event that really makes it the impact on this community. And so I know I've tell my family this all the time. I go to Indianapolis for an event, and I'm always amazed by how many volunteers are involved in these
Mhm.
events. Could you talk a little bit about how, you get the local community to buy in, how you get so many volunteers to give up their time to really invest into bringing these large scale sports events into the community?
Yeah, I think it's I mean part of it is who we are as Hoosiers. But also it people get experiences that they wouldn't necessarily ever get to experience. We were fortunate to host the 1987 Pan American Games. That games was originally awarded to another city in South America, and they were not going to be able to complete their obligations, and so we sort of stole it from them. And but that was really our foray into big sporting events, and we still to this day have volunteers that volunteered during that event. We've continued to evolve, and they bring their friends and they bring their families, and those people then get engaged. But you just get an opportunity as a volunteer to experience that event in a different way. Sure, you can buy a ticket to a Final Four, but you also could get an opportunity to stand outside, giving directions to someone, or being a team host, or being at a welcome center at a hotel. And it's a different sort of experience that you get to have. And so I think that's how we recruit volunteers. COVID has made it really difficult, and so we've had to change some of our strategy in how we recruit new volunteers. But that's part of evolution, right? And that's part of innovation and figuring out where you go next and how you go engage with those people. Because I mean, like I said, a lot of those volunteers came from 1987, and they're not volunteering at the same rate that they were before. So, having to backfill that and figure out how we engage a new generation in volunteering.
I think a big part of that will be some of these events that you have coming into the city coming up over the course of the next few years. I know I'm going to have to read this off because there are so many different events that you guys are hosting, but Indianapolis has recently hosted numerous major sporting events, including the NBA All-Star Game, the U.S. Olympic Team Swim Trials, the NFL Combine, and several college basketball tournament games. In 2025, the city will host more large events, including WWE's Royal Rumble, the NCAA Division I Men's Basketball Midwest Regional, the WNBA All-Star Game, and the Big Ten Football Championship, and several other collegiate championships. I don't know when you guys sleep, but could you tell us a little bit more about what goes into bringing some of these big sporting events into the city of Indianapolis, and how do you decide which events to bid on to bring into the city?
To sort of answer the first part of your question, it's very much about relationships. It's building the relationships with the event owners, with, for instance, the Big Ten, with the NBA, with the NCAA around their events. And it's just building those relationships and then giving them an opportunity to see what we can do in Indianapolis. I think the Final Four is a perfect example. In 2026, we will host our 9th Final Four. And every single time the Final Four is here, we figure out a way to add something to it that is innovative and that then is so successful that they want to continue to keep it. So, for instance, one of their signature events is called Read to the Final Four, and it's a year-long statewide reading program that every state that hosts a Final Four has to implement. And it's basically a competition of how many books you read, or how many pages you read for third graders over the course of a year. And then in like the February timeframe, they literally set up a 64 team bracket, and then it turns into a March Madness style competition. That's something that we created back in 2015. And that is something that's still a stalwart now of events that have to be done with the Final Four. The Final Four Music Festival is the same way. We did it for the first time here, and that's a staple of their event now. So we always find ways to innovate. Even in 2021, when we didn't have very many fans here, we did a new event that was a very TED Talk style event for their student athletes, and that event continues to be a part of what they do every year. So even in a trying circumstance like 2021, we were able to find ways to be innovative and and create something lasting for them. So I think that that's the way we show value to our event owners and make them want to continue to come back. And then to answer the second part of your question, which is how do you choose, what events you're bidding on? For us, a lot of it has to do with availability. We have some amazing venues here, but we also have a very robust convention schedule. We have one of the best convention centers in the country, and it's busy about 340 days a year. And so when that convention center is busy, that usually means our hotels are busy. So we have to, play Tetris a little bit to figure out, what events we want to go after, but then also do they fit? What years do they fit in? How can we do this? So that's a lot of it. We do a lot of swimming. We do a lot of basketball. We do a lot of, we're starting really to get back into track and field. That was a staple for us in the past. And we recently had some major investments made in our facilities that will allow us to continue to do more. So it really is highlighting our facilities and then trying to figure out a timing with everything else that's going on in our city.
I've also been fortunate enough to attend the convention center and some of the events that they've had alongside of some of those bigger events like the Big Ten Championship and USA Swimming Trials this summer. And it's unbelievable just the space and how walkable everything is within the city. But so when you are looking for a new partner or bringing in a new event into the city, what matters most to your organization when working with an event organization?
I think a lot of it for us is how we can engage the community. That's really important to us. Consistently looking for new sports, new ways to bring in. This weekend is a great example. Although we're not super involved in it, we will be in the future. USA Lacrosse is doing what they call the USA Lacrosse Experience at our downtown park. And that's the first time that USA Lacrosse has done anything in our city. And so, we've tried to amplify their message to get our community to come out, enjoy it, learn more about lacrosse, because lacrosse lacrosse sixes will be in the Olympics in 2028. So their goals are to continue to build the interest, especially in the Midwest, and ours are to help them do that. Right. And so, to be involved in the community. And so hopefully for them that this weekend goes really well. And then we'll continue to help them in the future to try to build that event.
That's awesome.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, it's sometimes hard when we communicate, what goes on in Indianapolis outside of those big name events, but there are so many other events that are taking place that we don't know about, and that you guys are continuing to grow those partnerships. So we love to hear when sports are growing in different parts of the country as well. So I know we touched a little bit on some of the kind of innovative events that you've had within the city. And a big topic of this podcast is about innovation. I was lucky enough to attend the 2024 Olympic swim trials this past summer. It was one of the most incredible events I've ever spectated, and just continue to be in awe with what your team was able to accomplish in partnership with USA Swimming. Could you talk a little bit about what went into that process, what it was like, how you even thought of having two pools in an NFL stadium?
I can't take complete credit for it. I won't take complete credit for it, but it's an idea actually that sort of started back in probably 2012, 2013. The U.S. Olympic team trials for swimming had been hosted in our natatorium for years. We have one of the fastest pools in the country at our downtown natatorium. And so all up through 2000, the trials had been held there. And I mean, it's one of the biggest natatoriums in the country. It holds 4,700 people. But it was, they outgrew it for trials. And so at that point, they started building pools in basketball arenas. So they went to Omaha, Nebraska, and the CHI Center, they would build a pool in the CHI Center. And so that would hold roughly 14,000. And by the time they'd gotten to 2012 and going into 2016, they knew that they would start to fill that up and it would be at capacity. So what could they then do to continue to grow that? And so, there were lots of conversations, I think, prior to even me coming to Sports Corp, about could we put it in an NFL stadium? Our stadium is built, frankly, to host Final Fours, right? So the configuration of our stadium allows for there to be a center hung curtain with that will allow for more than 35,000 spectators on one side, which when you talk about regionals that we'll host next year, we do that in our stadium. We don't do it in a basketball arena. And so, that was our idea with USA Swimming was can we put up that center hung curtain? Can we build a competition pool on one side and then a warm up pool on the other side? Because, having access quickly to a warm up, warm down pool is very important for athletes. And so we started putting our heads together with them in 2019, 2020. And actually the pandemic was a bit of a blessing because it gave me plenty of time to work on that bid and work with our construction designers about how we would put that whole pool together and that configuration together. And so then it really just became, it goes back to one of those things with relationships, right? So USA Swimming had to trust that Indianapolis could get it done. And so we were in a partnership with them to put this event on. And I think everybody would agree that it was a great success. And that so much so that now in the Olympics in 28, they're going to build a pool in SoFi Stadium. So yeah, I think it comes with a lot of trust, but it also is how can we do things different and make it bigger and better and really have an impact on that sport and the sport of swimming. I mean, one of their board chair right after the event said that we changed swimming forever, which is just a really cool thing to think about, and that trials will never probably be in something smaller again, which is really awesome.
It was incredible. I still talk about, we hear all the time in our industry about the event experience. And when I flew into Indianapolis, the first thing I saw was the whole floor. There was it looked like a swimming pool to welcome everyone coming into the city at the airport. And so right then, I just putting myself in the athlete's shoes, like this is their Super Bowl. You train so hard, and now you're in a city that cares so much and is supporting you making it to the Olympics. And the whole experience, like I said, was one of the coolest experiences I've been a part of. I was so grateful to be able to be there with you guys. And I remember kind of right after the championships, I was with some of your team members, and I asked, what's been your favorite part? There's so much time and effort, years that have gone into the planning and execution of this event. And you said, it really is all about the impact that this has had in the community, and for kids to see if they dream big, they can accomplish their goals. And I know there were a few swimmers just from the local Indianapolis area. And so for them to get exposure, not just to a huge sporting event, but an event or that they didn't even know was possible into their city. Can you talk a little bit more on that community impact and how that drives you?
Absolutely. That was the part that I got to be intimately involved with. And we made a decision at the onset of putting that, like the budget together and the partnership together with USA Swimming, that we were going to set aside money to fund grants to teach 50,000 Hoosiers how to swim. And so we had a goal that by the end of 2024, we would reach that 50,000 mark. And we're real dang close, like real close. And that part for me is just incredible, right? Like it's just knowing that people, swimming is the only sport that can save your life. And so putting people in a position where they get access to something that can save their life if something were to happen to them is a really humbling experience. And then on top of that, we had a really concerted effort to bring so many of those community-based organizations that were teaching kids how to swim. We were lucky, it was right in the middle of summer, so there's all kinds of camps happening at YMCAs and Boys and Girls Clubs. And we really made an effort to make sure kids could have the opportunity to come to the event. And so every single session, over 9 days and 17 sessions, every single session had hundreds of kids who were given free tickets or discounted tickets to be there, to see it, to experience it. And to your point, and be able to envision themselves in that situation. Like, I'm taking a swim lesson today for the first time, and this could be me in 4 or 5 years. So from that perspective, it had a huge impact on our community. And to your point, several of we are blessed to have a really strong swim community from a competition side in Indiana. and several of the I think we had 6 or 7 kids or people from Indiana, athletes from Indiana who made the Olympic team, which was really awesome, including a 17-year-old from Carmel, just north of Indianapolis. And she was one of the youngest people on the team and ended up winning a gold medal in Paris. So just that, again, that kind of impact and what it did for the city of Carmel and what it did for our local community in the sense of bringing awareness to how important it is for people to learn how to swim.
That's incredible. And I'm sure, like you talked about, it's a new generation and getting people more involved within these events and bringing everything from, the swimming trials and being at the forefront of this sports tourism industry. I know will make a huge impact on years to come. And so speaking of years to come, Indiana Sports Corp recently unveiled her 2050 vision framework to make Indiana the global epicenter of sports by 2050. I know it's comprised of 5 pillars, which I can't believe that 2050 is going to be in our lifetime. But could you talk a little bit about what is that vision, what's included in the framework, and how you guys see where this industry is going and the impact it'll have on the state of Indiana?
Yeah. So, I mean, we talked earlier about the fact that we were the first sports commission and founded in 1979. And our founding fathers, as we like to call them, really had a framework for what they wanted sports tourism to look like and amateur sports to look like in our city. And so I think we got to our 40-year anniversary and decided it was time to look out further and figure out what is our legacy going to be going forward, and how are we going to continue to impact sports business and sports tourism in Indiana. And so the 2050 vision is not necessarily a framework just for Indiana Sports Corp. It's for sports across the state of Indiana. And like you mentioned, there's 5 pillars. Sports events, which will always be the pillar for Indiana Sports Corp. We will continue to put on great sporting events. But then really diving into sports tech, businesses like yours, and how are we helping create an ecosystem where sports tech businesses want to be in Indiana, but then also have the access to test their product or sell their product to our athletes, our teams, our leagues, and just really engaging sports tech in everything that we do. The third is sports academia. We have a couple of schools here, D1 schools in Indianapolis that have fabulous sport management programs, sports medicine programs. And so how are we continuing to evolve what they're doing and combine that into the overall story of sports in Indiana? And then sports business leadership. What are we doing to, we think we're pretty good. We think we kind of know what we're doing. And so what are we doing to share that information with others, right? And so are we, does that mean we are hosting several sports business leadership conferences over the years and providing that thought leadership for other communities or other businesses to continue to grow as well, just based off of what we've learned? And then the final really is women's sports. And, we are in a very unique time right now in our community. We have one of the best female basketball players in the world on our team. And frankly, women's sports is having a moment, right? People are really paying attention to women's sports and the competition level that is happening, and that it's not just something that you do if you're bored or that's what your daughter plays or whatever. It's really great competition, people that should be recognized for the work that they're doing. And so we really want to have an emphasis on bringing women's sporting events here. We'll host our 3rd Women's Final Four in 2028, which we're really excited about. We have a professional women's volleyball team that will enter their league in January. Also very excited about that. Continuing just to amplify women's sports and the things that are happening is that 5th pillar, and really why we want to do that. So don't get me started talking about volleyball. I can talk all day about it. It's become a bit of an obsession for me. But just really finding ways to continue to bolster what's happening in that movement. So yeah.
And making it not just a moment,
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, and I think, I mean, we were joking earlier about my coworker Sarah and saying, but one of the things that she says, it's not a moment, it's a movement, right? And so making sure that we're a part of that movement and moving our city forward to make it very friendly for women's sports and sports events.
That's awesome. And I know we could spend 5 different podcasts talking about each of those pillars, but we have limited time, so you will definitely be back, Melissa. But so over the course of your career, this is a question I want to ask every guest we have on. What has been, the most important or biggest lesson that you've learned in your experience in sports?
I think, to be honest, I think it's not to take yourself so seriously. Recently, I have a 16-year-old niece, and she asked all of the adults in the family, what do you like about being older as opposed to have been younger? And I think one of the things that I told her was that you just learn that not everything matters. And, when you're 16 and you're her age, uh, everything that everybody says matters and what people think of you matters. And you're worried about all that stuff all the time. And you just get to a point, and I think I've learned that through this job a lot, is that I have to show up every day and do a really good job. And that's what matters. It doesn't matter if the person across the hall likes me. It doesn't matter if they approve of what I do. But if I know that I'm bringing solid sporting events to Indianapolis and I have great relationships with people across the country to bring those events here, and I'm showing up every day as genuinely who I am, that's what's important. So I think that's one of the things it's taught me. I mean, it's a lesson I probably should have learned a long time ago that I've really learned in the last few years. And being in this industry has really taught me that. When I first came into the industry, I used to say the politics of sports is worse than the politics of politics. But it really is about learning how to navigate that and understanding who matters and who doesn't. And not that people don't matter, all people matter, but like in your realm, right? Like who matters and whose opinion matters to you and your career.
I love that. And I've realized as I'm asking for this question, it's selfishly because, that's not something that I've really thought about, that I've learned not just through, my participation in sports, but just over the course of the last few years being in this industry. But that's great. Your niece is a lucky girl to have you to look up to.
I think they get annoyed with me, but
Oh, same. Mine aren't at the age to do that yet, but I know it'll be the same.
Yeah.
But so I know we mentioned a ton of things that you guys have going on for this year outside of a vacation. What are you most looking forward to over the course of the next year?
So we actually are going to host an event that we haven't, in the time that I've been here, we've not hosted. So we will host the NCAA Women's Collegiate Water Polo Championships in May of next year. That's another sport that is becoming increasingly more popular, especially on the women's side. And they did so well in Paris, the Olympic team. And so we're going to host that event for the first time since I think 2017, which was before I was here. So I'm just excited to do a new event and to work with new people and to get to see a new sport that I don't get to see very often unless I'm watching the Olympics. So that I think is probably the most exciting for me. And then, yeah, just continuing we didn't necessarily touch on this, but have the privilege of leading our Women in Sports and Events chapter here in Indianapolis and continuing. We are 2 years old and we are, one of the largest chapters in the country already. And so just the honor of leading that and continuing to see that grow and to provide quality events and opportunities to the women in the sports and events industry is something that I always am looking forward to.
Love to. We could also have a whole podcast on that too, and your side jobs, your board jobs. But I know most of this has been a pitch of Indianapolis. I mean, I can attest. I've been to a bunch of sporting events there now. It's one of my favorite cities to go to for an event, not just because of the event, because of the people
and the shrimp cocktail.
And the shrimp cocktail. I dream of it. But I think this has been a great pitch for the city of Indianapolis. But in a few words, if you could pitch to a new event organization or an event coming into the city, why should they come to Indianapolis?
We're easy to navigate. We love sports, and we just have a great atmosphere and ecosystem for sports. And we're very walkable and economical. So you're not going to find probably a much cheaper place to hold an event, but get a high quality experience. And we were just named the best sports host city. So why wouldn't you want to come here?
I love it. Awesome. So I just want to end with a quick story. I know this is our first podcast interview, and it made me reminisce on how we first met. And I don't know if you remember this, but as part of the Techstars program, I was one of the only females within this program. There were 10 companies, and it was kind of like a boot camp for startups, for anyone who doesn't know what Techstars is. And so it was so instrumental in where we were at the time and where we are today. But I'll never forget one of the activities, I don't know what you would call it, was to give a 2-minute pitch in front of a whole board of people in a small room. And there were probably, no exaggeration, 50 to 75 people within this small room.
Yep.
And Sean, one of my co-founders, and I, our CEO, had to give a pitch in 2 minutes to all of these people. And I remember it being so intimidating. And as soon as we were done, I thought we actually did pretty well. At the time, you came up to me right after and encouraged me and supported me and made me feel seen and heard. From that time on, you've been such an important friend, an important mentor, and I'm so proud to call you that. And I'm just so grateful for you. And I'm so happy that you were able to be our first guest, because there's no one I would have rather have been. So thank you for taking the time.
I remember the room. I don't remember coming up to you afterward, but that sounds like something.
I have. Yeah, and then a few glasses of wine after that, just to celebrate. It was truly one of the best parts of that summer, and just really grateful. So thank you so much for being here and for taking the time. You're one of the busiest women I know.
Glad. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Until next time, we'll see you later.